So you're looking to play a good controller. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, and you also want to do really, really good damage. Okay. And you want to be a very effective healer? Okay, so let me get this straight. You want to be a very good controller who can also do very good damage and be a very good healer. Well, you're in luck. Because behind today's secret door, the Circle of the Stars Druid Test Drive. So behind today's secret door, the Circle of the Stars Druid Test Drive. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Alright, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo, Doug, and Jamie for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. So a test drive is exactly what it sounds like. It's your ability to see how a class will play. In this particular case, I'll be taking you from levels 1 through 10. We'll go level by level, and we'll see just how that class will feel as you go through it. Because it's one thing to read about how the class plays in the book or watching a build video or something like that, but sometimes it doesn't play exactly as you might have hoped. And so that's what the test drive is here for, is just your chance to see how the class will go level by level. So along the way, I'll be giving my ideas of what are going to be optimal choices. So it's going to be kind of buildish and it's going to be kind of guide-ish, but it's really neither of those things. In total, it is what it is. It's a test drive. Now, this particular test drive is going to trend a bit more on the guide-ish end. I'm going to give you two different ideas of, they really stem from which race to pick, and that will give you a kind of pathway of playstyle. I think either of these playstyles is equally good. One will be a bit more flexible in an already incredibly flexible class. It will maximize that flexibility, take advantage of that flexibility. And the other will specialize a little bit more on action economy and damage. Now, normally when I do a test drive, I go into some role-playing considerations, especially if it's a class we've never seen before in D&D, like, the Rune Knight or things like that are just coming out of kind of nowhere. But the Circle of the Stars Druid, I think, is pretty much you're going to have a pretty good idea of how you're going to want to approach the character. I will, however, at 5th level, have a pretty fun special effect for a spell. Whether you call that a role-playing idea or not, it's simply just a special effect for your signature spell at 5th level. Now, before I get into the mechanical considerations, please always, whenever I do a test drive, always check the pinned comment. Really, with any of my videos, you should check the pinned comment. But when we're doing a test drive like this, there may be things that didn't quite make it into the edit or make it through the edit. There may have been a mistake that I made. I may have just misspoke, or I may have just gotten something wrong. That's happened before. So those things will all be noted in the pinned comment. All right. So we're going to begin with what race to pick. And I'm going to suggest that you either take the High Elf, that would be for the high flexibility version of the character, or you could go with the Infernal Tiefling. The Circle of the Stars Druid already has a pretty effective action economy, but the Infernal Tiefling will take that into maximum capacity. Just a very quick overview of what the High Elf will give you is obviously you get trance. That's going to be important. That's a nice trick that you're going to be able to do with a High Elf. At 1st level, also the High Elf gets the Prestidigitation cantrip, which you can actually trade out at a long rest for any wizard cantrip. So that's a very flexible thing to do. This character will be able to have maximum ability to take advantage of melee combat, martial combat, if it really chooses to. I'm viewing the Circle of the Stars Druid as the premier casting druid. But that being said, having something as simple as just by having one cantrip being able to be an effective melee combatant is sometimes spells just aren't going to cut it. I always like knowing if I'm playing a caster, if I can have that kind of an option where I can still be effective. You won't be dominant as a melee character by any means, but you will be able to do nice damage in melee. Obviously, the High Elf gets Dark Vision. At 3rd level, it gets Detect Magic. And at 5th level, it gets the Misty Step spell. So Detect Magic may not be a terribly exciting spell. However, it's an incredibly important spell. So it's very nice to have that for free. And of course, you get a free casting with each of those, and you can cast them again with spells that are always prepared, etc., etc., etc. And the elf also, of course, gets advantage against Charmed, and it's immune to magical sleep, that kind of thing. But what I mentioned here earlier, those are the things that I'm really most concerned about here. The Infernal Tiefling, on the other hand, you are going to get, of course, Dark Vision. You're going to get Fire Resistance. Fire Resistance is a terrific damage resistance because fire and poison are probably the two most common, and necrotic is right in that kind of neighborhood as well, but I would say fire and poison are going to be the two most common non-weapon-based damage types that you're going to face. At 3rd level, the Infernal Tiefling gets Hellish Rebuke, which is why we're here. And at 5th level, you would gain access to Darkness. Darkness is one of those spells that actually can be the contributor to an entire encounter. So having that in your back pocket as a go-to spell, it's nice to have it. But it's Hellish Rebuke, which is, really the sole reason. Now, there is one other reason why I kind of like the Infernal Tiefling as a Circle of the Stars Druid. I like the juxtaposition of the Celestial with the fiendish nature of the Tiefling. So I like that quite a bit, actually. So if I were to weigh one against the other, they come out about equal, except that, of course, one of the reasons you're taking the High Elf is you get Trance, which is going to be great, and you're going to gain access to being able to have a wandering cantrip, for lack of a better term, which, of course, I think you're probably going to land on True Strike. So right out of the gate, you're getting what you really want. Now, with the Tiefling, you are getting Fire Resistance, and of course, both get Dark Vision, etc., etc. But what we're really here for is not going to come online until 3rd level. Now, that's not very long to wait. You're going to get it at the exact same time you become a Circle of the Stars Druid, but I just want to point out that the High Elf will get a little bit of a better head start right out of the gate than the Infernal Tiefling will. Now, for the origin feat to take, either way you go, you take Alert. You can be playing as a primary controller, or you could be playing as a damage dealer. Either is equally good, and you will have the option every single combat of which you think is going to be best for that situation. I'm going to be quoting combat quite a bit, but I'm going to obviously be pointing out the control spells that are going to be effective. Now, for stats, I'm going to suggest that you buy 2 15s. One of those 15s goes into Wisdom, the other goes into Con. With Wisdom, you're obviously going to put your +2 into that, so you'll have a 17, and you put the +1 into Con for a 16. Then you're going to buy a 14 Dex, and then you are going to take a 10 Charisma, and you're going to dump Intelligence and Strength, or you could put the 10 into Intelligence or Strength and dump Charisma. Whichever you prefer, I would probably, because Charisma is a saving throw that you don't want to have a penalty on, I would say put the 10 there. Now, this is for how I would approach the character, which I think is its best attribute it has going for it is that it is a very flexible caster, but it does have martial aspects to it. If you really want to capitalize on those, and if you went with the High Elf and you have True Strike, and if you can still do the same thing with the Tiefling, you'll just be relying on Shillelagh. And in that case, you're not going to have any kind of stat problem. But if you did want to go with True Strike with the High Elf, and you wanted to use something like a great weapon, like a greatsword, say, then you're going to need that 13 strength just to be able to wield it without having disadvantage. You're going to be buying that 15 and then 2 13s, one to go into strength, and a 14, which means that you're going to be dumping still 2 stats, but you're going to have 1 point left over, which you can put into one of those. And so obviously you're going to still put that if we're going in this martial branch here, you're going to be putting that +2 from wisdom, or that +2 into wisdom, and then the +1 into one of the 13s to make it a 14. The 14, both those 14s will then go into dex and con, and the 13 goes into strength. This is obviously not as efficient. It's not as effective, but it's not crippling either. And it will allow you to do that if you really want to play it that way. There's some reasons, there's some appeal to doing it that way. But I think you should just cast. All right. So here at level 1, we get spellcasting and our primal order. Now, the Druid already starts with a D8, and it starts with access to light armor and shields. Our primal order is going to give us the choice of the Magician or the Warden. The Warden is going to give us access to martial weapons and to medium armor, and that's what we're going to pick. Now, when it comes to spellcasting, normally I will spend a great deal of time worrying about exactly what spells to pick. What I'm going to be giving you is, of course, the highlight spells, but I'm not going to be as concerned about this because it's a divine class. And with a divine class, you can just change your preparations day by day. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to. Obviously, you want to be picking good spells on your preparations. I'm going to help you with that, of course. But I'm just worried about the must-have spells. One of the joys of playing a divine character is actually in putting some things on your prep list that you might not otherwise pick on a lark, and just to try them out. That's certainly worth doing because sometimes those kind of spells that kind of sit, they're good, but they're not good enough to make the must-take list. That spell may be really good at your particular table, and you'll never know it if you don't try it. So with that in mind, the two spells that I'm most worried about you taking, and the Druid spell list is actually a very good spell list. I really like the Druid. You're going to want to take Entangle and Goodberry, and both of these are worth discussing here just a little bit. Entangle is a great control spell. So Entangle is a 20-foot square. That means it's 16 area squares. The area becomes difficult terrain for the duration. It's a concentration spell, and any creature in the Entangle other than yourself has to make a saving throw. If they fail the saving throw, they're restrained. Now, here's the fun part. To actually get a second saving throw, which spells like this almost always give, and this one does, they have to spend their action to do it. Now, the restrained condition doesn't mean that they can't take an action. Of course, they could try and fight while restrained, but restrained is, of course, a pretty awful condition to have. The downside to Entangle is that it's making a strength check. So, athletics, to be precise. So, any kind of really big, powerful creature is going to have a much better chance of doing it. And just because it's more likely that they'll make the save because it's strength on a powerful creature doesn't mean that they'll make the save. I would say they're probably in the, all things being equal, if they're particularly strong, they're going to be more on the 60% chance of making the save in general. So there's still a very good chance that they'll fail that save. And then they have to spend another action, at that point, they're done. If they haven't done anything by round 3, they're done. It's also worth repeating here that I assume that you'll have about 3 different combats in the course of an adventuring day, each one averaging about 4 rounds. That's a very important consideration for this video in particular, especially for how the Tiefling plays. Goodberry is, of course, a pretty famous spell, but it's worth noting here that those 10 berries last for 24 hours. Each one heals a hit point and provides sustenance for the day. But they last 24 hours. So there's a great trick you can do as a druid and as a ranger. At the end of an adventuring day, whatever spell slots you have left, burn them into Goodberry. Those berries will then be there for you when you wake up and for the rest of that adventuring day. So if you had 3 extra spell slots, burn them into Goodberries. You've got 30 free Goodberries for the next day. That's an incredibly effective healing device. Now, I mentioned how you're going to be a great healer. This is pretty much what I'm talking about. It's Goodberry, but there are ways that you could be a much more effective healer if you really, really wanted to. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I think that with the Goodberry trick, you've probably got that covered. And besides, how that healing thing will work is no particular trick. It will be painfully obvious how that works. So those are your two big spells. And it should be noted here that you, at first level, you have only 2 spell slots. So if we are figuring 3 combats in a day, you don't have any means of getting another spell slot. So you've got 2, that's what you've got. But you do have medium armor, you do have shield, and you do have access to martial weapons. So you could do that, and of course you could just cast cantrips. Then at level 2, we get Wild Shape and we get Wild Companion. Now, I'm not really going to talk too much about Wild Shape here because it really just gets morphed into what we get at 3rd level. But if you ever did want to use a Wild Shape to become an animal in combat or during an adventuring day, then this would be the time to do it because they're going to be used up for other things. Now, having said all that, if you're in town, it is going to sometimes be useful to use Wild Shape to maybe tail someone so that they don't notice you, or spy on somebody and they don't notice you, that kind of thing. That's where there's still a great deal of utility in Wild Shape. Wild Companion, on the other hand, is going to allow you to cast the Find Familiar spell by burning a use of Wild Shape, and you don't have any of the material component costs for it. It's very nice. The downside is the familiar disappears at the end of your long rest. You have 2 uses of Wild Shape, but at a short rest, you can recover an expended use of your Wild Shape. So here's the first trick here at level 2 with the High Elf with Trance. The party's out taking a long rest. You do your trance. There in that long rest for 8 hours, you trance for 4. You've completed your long rest. You burn a use of your Wild Shape, casting Find Familiar. Your familiar is with you now, and you then take a short rest while everybody else is still sleeping. Then that recovers that use of the Wild Shape, and you're still good to go. So you just got Find Familiar literally for free. Now, this is the big trance trick that you get as the High Elf, but it's a really good one. Now, I am going to be referring to using that familiar. I'm going to assume that you're always going to have Find Familiar. The Tiefling is not going to have it in that automatic sense. That same mechanic will still work for the Tiefling. It's just that it's not going to be as convenient for the rest of the party. And because you only have 2 uses of Wild Shape and you don't know when you're going to need that long rest, I can't really suggest that you just burn them willy-nilly. Now, at this level here, of course you can. But at level 3 and from there forward, it's going to be a bit more difficult. Now, you're going to gain more uses of Wild Shape, and then that difficulty disappears entirely for the Tiefling. So here at level 2, you've got Entangle. You're being a very effective controller. You've got Goodberry being a very effective healer. You've got Wild Companion, which is the Find Familiar spell. So you're going to have an effective Scout. You're going to be an effective Spy. And of course, with Wild Shape here at level 2, you could also be an effective Spy. You also get your 3rd first level spell slot. So now you should have a big spell for each of your expected encounters for the day. Okay. Level 3, of course, we get the Circle of Stars. Now you're going to gain a Starry map, and that's going to give you 2 things. You're going to gain the Guidance cantrip. You'll always have that prepared. So the Circle of Stars Druid does not have a spell list. That's okay with me because the Druid spell list is actually pretty good. Instead, it gets something that's kind of crazy to me. So you're getting Guidance, which is arguably the best cantrip in the game. But you're also able to cast Guiding Bolt. You're able to cast it without expending a spell slot, and you're able to do this a number of times per day, or long rest, equal to your Wisdom modifier. So you're 3rd level, so you just got your 2nd level spell slots. That's a big, big deal, of course. You got 2 of those. You've got 4 of your 1st level spell slots now. So in this one level, from 2 to 4, you have 4 first level spell slots. So that's a pickup of 1, a pickup of 2 more with 2nd level spell slots. And everybody gets that, but you get 3 more with Guiding Bolt. And it's going to be 4 in the next level. With Guiding Bolt, you make a spell attack roll and you do 4d6 in damage. And the next attack on that creature has advantage. So we'll get into the order of how combats should look in just one second, because we're not done yet. You also get, of course, your Starry form. And with your Starry form, it's a bonus action to activate. When you take it, you're able to pick one of three forms. There's the Archer, there's the Chalice, and there's the Dragon. With the Archer, as a bonus action or on the turn when you activate your Starry form, you'll be able to make an attack roll on a target within 60 feet of you, and if on a hit, it'll do a d8 plus your Wisdom modifier in radiant damage. If you go with the Chalice form, when you use a spell slot that requires a spell slot that restores hit points to a target creature, you or another creature within 30 feet of you can restore hit points equal to a d8 plus your Wisdom modifier. That's really great. I mean, back in 2014, that was a free Cure Wounds. And then there's the form of the Dragon. When you take the form of the Dragon, if you are making an Intelligence or a Wisdom check, or you're making a saving throw for Constitution to maintain concentration, if you roll the d20, any roll of a 9 or less is treated as a 10. So if you are making perception checks, for example, your minimum roll is a 10. Investigation checks, the same, etc., etc., etc. But the biggest get here, of course, is that most concentration saves are 10. This is effectively autosave concentration as long as you are in the Dragon form. And there's the rub, because the Archer form is awfully, awfully good. There is a minor trick that will help you decide in any given combat whether you should be going into Archer or Dragon form. So initiative is rolled. It's your turn. The first thing you do, you don't activate your form. You cast. Neither the Archer nor the Dragon affect the casting of your spell. So cast your spell. We're assuming it's a concentration control spell. If that control spell affects a lot of targets, or maybe just that one really, really valuable target, whatever the case is, you have to quickly evaluate how important is it for me to protect that spell. If you didn't get a lot of people in the spell, if you lose concentration, I mean, you're still going to get your saving throw to make. If it's not absolutely critical to protect that spell, then take the Archer form. But if you jackpotted and you really need to protect that spell, then go ahead and go Dragon. But just that slight change in how you would think that order of combat should go out will help immeasurably. Now, it does last 10 minutes. So if you do get into another encounter, like let's say in a dungeon environment, you're not going to be able to pull that trick off. Obviously, you're going to be in one of those forms in that second encounter, but you're also getting that form for 2 encounters. And there's no reason why you would have to stick with it if you went into the second encounter. If it wasn't the form you really wanted and you have that extra form to burn, then just go ahead and burn it into the form that is going to be more usable for you. So if you were in Dragon and you walked into the second encounter and you didn't jackpot, it was just very mediocre, then go ahead and switch into Archer. Regardless, having a bonus action ranged attack of 60 feet of a d8 plus your Wisdom modifier is too good to not use whenever possible. But that being said, the Dragon is incredibly good for protecting must-have control spells. Now, if you're getting crazy lucky with your control spells, then you're going to be in Dragon form a lot, and you're going to do some less damage. I'm not really going to be quoting damage rolls throughout this test drive because we're not really too worried about that. But having the Archer is something I would assume that you're going to be getting into more than half the time. And of course, you can just risk it. You could be in the Archer form almost all the time. It's a great playstyle. The Circle of Stars Druid is simultaneously not only a great class for an experienced player, it's a great class to give to a beginning player, maybe one who's had just a little bit of experience and now wants to try and being a full caster. This is a great pick for them because they're going to be able to fix their mistakes as they go along. Being a divine caster means you're not stuck with those spell choices, and then you have the variability of the forms. And it sounds like maybe too many choices to make, but as you're going to see, we're only worried about a handful of spells here, really, to make this whole thing go. So one way or the other, these 3 forms, particularly the Archer and the Dragon, fantastic. Chalice is also obviously very, very good. And if you wanted to be playing as a healing druid, I mean, obviously that's the way you go. All right, so that was round 1. Round 2, now we start talking about Guiding Bolt. So in subsequent turns, you're going to be casting Guiding Bolt, and then you're going to be activating the Archer. Now, ideally speaking, of course, the Familiar is setting you up for advantage with Guiding Bolt. Guiding Bolt should probably hit, very probably will hit, and then set up advantage for the Archer. So you're going to be getting the most out of those two effects. And of course, with Guiding Bolt, having a double shot at criticaling, 4d6, not so bad. So here at level 3, you've got 2 of your second level spells, and we'll get to those in just 1 second. And you've got 4 first level spell slots, and you've got 3 uses right now of Guiding Bolt. As you start protracting out how the spell progression goes and how Guiding Bolt will also grow, you're going to get 4 uses of it next level, and you're going to get to 5 at level 8. I say all this to point this out, that there are 12 rounds of combat in my theoretical average adventuring day. So if 3 of those rounds are the opening rounds for the 3 combats, that's your opening spells. That leaves 9 rounds of non-opening round combat. You've got, right now, 4 first level spells and 3 free guiding bolts, soon to be 4. You could almost, at this level, you would have 7 guiding bolts that you could theoretically cast. Probably one of those is going to have to be used for a big spell, like for Entangle, because you've only got the 2 second level slots. But you see the point here, that you're going to be able to fill in every round of combat very quickly with casting Guiding Bolt on your off rounds. So Guiding Bolt becomes your attack cantrip. And if you are casting Guiding Bolt in this way, that extra advantage, and you're not in the Archer form, but are, say, in the Dragon form for this combat, that extra advantage isn't going to waste. That's helping out a party member. So second level spells of note here. Obviously, Spike Growth is a great spell. Spike Growth does damage, and it does difficult terrain as well. And it's a very big area. Now, with all of the push effects that are out in the game now, with weapon mastery properties and all that type of stuff, one of the cantrips that I think you should take would be Thorn Whip. Because theoretically, if you were using Spike Growth, you could be in a situation where if you cast Thorn Whip, you could drag somebody right back in through the Spike Growth, and every square they're dragged through, they're going to take 2d4 in damage. Now, is that worth having a cantrip just for that and not casting Guiding Bolt? I don't know. Part of me thinks that I would want to take it. I just happen to really like Thorn Whip as well, but I just thought I would point that out. And of course, there's push effects all over the place. So Spike Growth is obviously a premier pick. Another top pick is Moonbeam. Then there's things of note are Summon Beast, Flaming Sphere. I would probably take both Spike Growth and Moonbeam. And we should note that here at 3rd level, you're also getting Detect Magic if you went High Elf, and you're getting Hellish Rebuke for the Tiefling. So let's talk very quickly about what the Tiefling will do. This is the exact same idea that I illustrated with Guiding Bolt, but as you gain more and more spell slots, and you'll see that you're going to be filled up very, very quickly, and then you're going to be wondering, what else could I have done because I still have spell slots left over? Now, at the end of the day, that's true, and you can use those converted spell slots into Goodberry for the next day. You should always be glad to do that. The Tiefling is going to be sacrificing that a little bit for Hellish Rebuke. Now, they're going to get 1 casting of Hellish Rebuke. Hellish Rebuke is a reaction spell, and it affects targets at range, so it isn't just something that happens in melee, like Armor of Agathis. Now, Guiding Bolt, when you hit the next level, you're going to be having 4 uses of Guiding Bolt for free, plus your 4 first level spell slots that presumably you're casting into Guiding Bolt. So you've got 8 out of the 9 possible slots taken care of. That will get to 9 at 8th level. What you're going to do for that one extra round, I'm just going to leave that to you. It's going to be entirely situational. You'll have a spell slot to pick from. But the point is that the excess spell slots so you've got 3 that you're spending for your big opening spell, the rest for guiding bolts, and then the rest after that, which is going to be starting very, very soon, you're going to start wanting to be using for Hellish Rebuke. Now, you're going to get 1 for free for being the Tiefling. But by 9th level, you'll be able to do about 6 Hellish Rebukes, and a lot of them are going to be upcast. Actually, almost all of them are going to be upcast after that first one. Hellish Rebuke actually upcasts pretty well because it's a 50% increase in damage for upcasting it, and that's a very nice upcast. So the Circle of Stars Druid by itself is going to have great action economy afforded to it, and you're going to gain an ability at 6th level, which is also going to be using your reactions. It just so happens that with the Hellish Rebuke reaction option, between that and your 6th level option, almost every reaction that you're going to have in a day will be accounted for between those two things. Now, the High Elf won't get that in terms of using Hellish Rebuke, but they've got the Trance Trick and the option of being a more effective melee character should that really be a thing for them to think about. Your DPR with Hellish Rebuke will be up to 8, 9, or 10 by about level 9. Now, you're burning all your spell slots by that point to do it, but that's what they're there for. So it's a very aggressive play style, and it's just a nice option to be able to do damage off of your reaction. Now, it should be noted that you can only do that when you get hit, and you have armor and you have a shield. So let's talk about that very quickly as well. So if you're the Tiefling, you're never using a weapon, but you have medium armor and you have a shield, so you've got a reasonably good armor class, and you're casting with the other hand. If you're the High Elf and you took True Strike, and you went with the Great Sword idea, you should note that while True Strike does have a somatic component to it, you can still cast it with 2 hands because the material component of the spell is the weapon. And by the virtue of how the rules work, if the spell requires a material component, you have to have a hand using for that material component, and that hand can do the somatic component requirement with the same hand. So if you, in this particular case, as weird as it is, with True Strike, you can cast it with a great weapon, even though you don't have a free hand, and it has both a somatic and a material component. So the High Elf will be trading out a little bit of defense for the offense, and trading, I think, too much away to get for the great weapon, but you could also use a longsword and just do a D10. So at 4th level, we get our ASI, and the ASI, I'm going to suggest you take one of 2. I would suggest that you either take Inspiring Leader, or you could take Warcaster. Now, Warcaster, I have to just mention it because there are flexible reasons to take it. I think it's overkill, but you're not always, but it also means that you can more liberally go into Archer form. But if you did go into dragon form, it is straight up overkill. But if you were, say, the elf, and you were going to be going into melee, and then Warcaster triggers with an opportunity attack, that's going to allow the High Elf to be able to use their reaction more effectively because they can cast True Strike with Warcaster. So Warcaster, strangely for the elf, can even add even more flexibility to them because it would free them also up to use the archer more and more and more. Handing out temporary hit points or across the board like that with Inspiring Leader is awfully, awfully good. Either way, you can't really miss. Now, at 4th level, there is one thing if you went elf that you should definitely grab if you can. If your DM is still allowing racial feats, you should strongly consider taking Elven Accuracy. You're going to be casting Guiding Bolt all the time, and the archer is going to be going off all the time. This is going to put your to hit at something, basically you'll have a 5% chance to miss against the curve. and a very high critical chance. So it's going to make everything very, very reliable, and you're going to get the very most out of those spells and the Archer effect that you possibly can. But not every DM is going to allow using Xanathar stuff, so I just thought I'd note that here. And at 5th level, we get our 3rd level spells. Now, and you also are going to get your racial spells. So the Tiefling will get Darkness, and the Elf will get Misty Step. Now, the bonus action for Misty Step is going to be kind of a problem, because you only get one bonus action, and if you're using Archer, a problem. But if you're in Dragon form or in Chalice form, you could use that bonus action easily. But if you're in a situation where you need to get out of dodge, it's far more important to use the bonus action for that, for Misty Step, than it is to do the damage with Archer if you're in Archer form. Now, the must-take spell here is Conjure Animals. Conjure Animals, you conjure a large square of a pack of creatures. So it's 4 squares. They're intangible. They cannot be destroyed. So unlike how the name sounds, you're actually not summoning anything here. Well, nothing that's tangible, not a creature. When you move, you can automatically move the pack up to 30 feet. Anything that comes within 10 feet of the pack, you can force to make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail that save, they take 3d10 slashing damage. When you're within 5 feet of the pack, you have advantage on strength saving throws. That's nice, but that's a very, 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 very rare saving throw. So, in effect, Conjure Animals is very similar to something like Spirit Guardians. The damage can get crazy, absolutely crazy. So it's 4 squares and anything within 10 feet. So that's another 2 on either side. So you've got a 6x6 marker. So you've got 36 squares that you're able to affect with Conjure Animals. So because they can't be destroyed, you could easily be doing this and then dropping another direct damage spell right on top of that area that they just moved to as well, nuking everything that's there, hitting them with the Conjure Animals as well. So there's all kinds of things you're going to be able to do with Conjure Animals. This is the spell you're just going to be casting over and over and over again, like Guiding Bolt. Now, I mentioned a little special effect. It says clearly that they're spectral animals, and you can pick what type of animals that they are. If it's me, I'm going to make them look like the constellations. And I'm just going to have them pluck right out from the sky in that constellation form and just be there so that they look literally like the constellations. And as we would see them, not as we would see them in the sky, but as we would draw them on a star chart. So with the lines there. I think that would be actually a pretty obviously incredibly thematic, but just a very, very cool effect overall. Very evocative. And since it is your premier spell, having such a cool effect for such a spell you're going to be casting over and over and over again, and you could change up which ones they are for the constellation that appeals to you at that particular time. Now, talk to your DM about constellations that are in Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or whatever, because they're probably going to be different than what we've got in the real world. Now, there are other good 3rd level spells. I'm not going to worry about them because as long as you've got Conjure Animals, you're good. Now, also at 5th level, we get Wild Resurgence. So if you are out of wild shapes for any particular reason, you can burn a 1st level spell slot and get one back. Conversely, you can spend a use of wild shape and get a 1st level spell slot. You can only do that once in a day. Now, at 6th level, you're going to be getting a 3rd use of wild shape. It's going to be pretty tempting. It's definitely going to be worth considering, especially for the Tiefling, to burn one of those for grabbing an extra Hellish Rebuke. Certainly, it's going to be used to gain Find Familiar easily when you need it, of course. But if you didn't need to do that, then if you didn't need to use it that way, then you're going to want to burn one of those for a Hellish Rebuke. And at 6th level, you get Cosmic Omen. So when you finish a long rest, you roll a die, and if it comes, and this will give you access to a special reaction that you're going to be able to use a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier for the duration of that long rest. But you only get the use of whatever you rolled. So if you rolled even, you get wheel. And if you rolled odd, you get woe. With even, when someone's about to make a d20 test, you can add a d6 to it. With woe, when a creature that you see is about to make a d20 test, you can roll a d6 and take that as a minus. In both cases, it has to be a creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. Now, that's any d20 test. At this level, right now, you get 4 of those a day. If there's 12 rounds in a day, a third of them you're going to be able to affect the outcome of something, either for good or for bad. Odd is obviously going to be the better thing to get. It can affect saving throws, etc., etc. And if you're using something for a chance to succeed at something for you or another party member, your chances are already going to be in the positive end. So it can help solidify that. But for creatures that are in a 50-50 saving throw, you're getting a lot more value out of that, obviously, with that d6. Obviously, either of them is very, very good. So this is an incredibly powerful ability. So, I can't really overstate how effective these powers are. The ability to choose these forms, it's like basically taking with your Starry form, it's very much like being able to pick a school of magic as a wizard. And now you're getting divination sort of thrown in on top of it. It's very, very effective. At 7th level, you're getting Elemental Fury. You have your choice, and you can take either the cantrip or Primal Strike, which is what I'm going to suggest that you take. You're rolling an extra d8 in damage when you make an attack roll with a weapon or in beast form. So it won't affect the archer. It's actually not going to affect you all that much. You don't get very much out of this as Circle of the Stars, unfortunately, unless you are going into melee, in which case this is where between the cantrip extra damage and that Elemental Fury, that's why you can be doing a kind of reasonable amount of damage with that coupled with the archer. But here at 7th level, the Elemental Fury doesn't really matter very much. You're getting your 4th level spells. You get 1 spell slot here at 4th level, and you have access to Polymorph, so you take Polymorph. Polymorph is one of those spells that can turn a combat on its head. It's a fun spell, powerful spell. It will be really effective from now till pretty much the end of this test drive at level 10. There are other good spells here at level 4, obviously, but Polymorph is the must grab. So when you add all this stuff up with the Circle of Stars Druid, the ability to switch in these forms, the ability to dictate outcomes with what's going to be happening on the battlefield, that's like a divination wizard effect, and you get it many, many times a day. And I'm not saying it's as good as the divination effect, obviously, but it's still very, very good. And you have access to healing. And, at 5th level, you have access to Revivify, of course. So you've got the ability to bring back the dead. The wizard can't do that. So there's things you can do the wizard can't do, and there's things the wizard can do a little bit better than you can. It's very close. The wizard, I think, still, of course, has the edge, but it's very favorable. It's a very good comparison. And now at level 8, you get your ASI. And with your ASI, of course, we're taking our wisdom to 20. Now let's just take a quick stop and think about what that means. So with that +5, now you're getting 5 free guiding bolts. You're getting 5 uses of the Cosmic Omen. Now you're at the point where you've got 4 first level spell slots and 5 guiding bolts for free, which means you are casting for every available round of combat that you're not casting a big spell. And you could have done this earlier by sacrificing a wild shape as well. You could have done that at level 5. But if you're the tiefling, take a look. You've got 4 first level spell slots, 3 second, 3 third, 2 fourth. If you take those 2 fourth and 1 of the third as your big spells, then you've got your 4 spell slots that you needed for Guiding Bolt. That leaves 1 free Hellish Rebuke, 3 second level Hellish Rebukes, and 2 third level Hellish Rebukes. That's 6 Hellish Rebukes, 5 uses of Cosmic Omen. That's 11 out of the 12 possible reactions in a day. You're either affecting an outcome of something or you are giving damage to the enemy. And giving significant damage, if we're talking about a 3rd level Hellish Rebuke, that's 4d10. Either way you went, whether it go Tiefling or you go Elf, you're casting like crazy. In fact, now what the elf is going to be gaining out of all of this, by it still having spell slots available to it, is again, it's going to be able to dump them all into good berries. So the elf will have melee options and be a slightly more reliable healer than the tiefling. The tiefling will just do a lot more damage, have the cool factor, and the whole idea of a celestial-themed character who is, in fact, a fiend. Very fun, very effective, very, very fun character. And at 9th level, of course, we get our 5th level spells. You get access to scrying. That is very hard for me to never recommend. Whenever you can get a hold of scrying, you should always take scrying. However, there are 2 spells that you must pay attention to. One of them is Cone of Cold. Now, Cone of Cold isn't the greatest spell in the world, but it is a big area of effect, instant damage effect, that will play very, very well with conjure animals. Cone of Cold is a 60-foot cone. That's an enormous area. Now, it gets outclassed by other things on the wizard spell list, but it's a pretty good spell nonetheless. It's just that it gets outclassed by the others on the wizard spell list. So here it is on your spell list, and you also have Wall of Stone. The wizard gets Wall of Force. Wall of Stone, it's pretty good. So if you really wanted hard control, you should take Wall of Stone. If you really want the utility, take Scrying. If you really want the damage, you can be comboing that with Conjure Animals. So you're dealing an insane amount of area of effect damage at that point. And it's just so rare to have a persistent effect like that, a summon spell, that you can just lay the damage right on top of it and not worry about it. But if it were me, I would probably go with Wall of Stone. But it should be noted here, you have one of those spell slots, you now have a 3rd 4th level spell slot. And then at 10th level, you get Twinkling Constellations. This is going to upgrade both the Chalice and the Archer by a d8. And if you're in the dragon form, you get a fly speed of 20. But of course, the insane thing is that you get out of Twinkling Constellations is that at the start of each turn, you can change your form. Folks, that's crazy. This is such a good... The abilities Circle of Stars gets, the 3rd, the 6th, and the 10th, all are dynamite. All of them. Combine that with a good spell list, a flexible class in general, made even more flexible. Very powerful. So I don't see, if anybody were to go Circle of the Stars, you could play it any which way you wanted. If you really wanted to go heavy into melee, there's ways you can do that. I don't think it's the best use of the character, but you can still do it. You'll always have something to contribute. If you went high elf, you're going to have the flexibility. It's probably overall the most powerful of the 2 types. But the tiefling is going to be doing what it does. It's a bit more specialized. And it's a bit more of a verb of a character. It's going to be far more consistently active because of Hellish Rebuke. I love them both. I couldn't pick. They're about the same. I would give maybe just a smidge of an edge in power to the high elf. But if you wanted to be doing damage, it's just which one do you value more, really? And so that's why I included them both and made this a bit more guide-like. Now, when I play a druid, I always play Moon Druid. If I were to play a druid, though, right now, I'm pretty sure I'd be looking at Circle of the Stars. Well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.